Get it first with KGO Radio and KGO News Alerts. Text news to 35253 or sign up now at KGORadio.com.
Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl story continues to unfold. The president defending him in a recent interview with NBC, not defending Sergeant Bergdahl, but the swap for Bergdahl for those 5 Guantanamo Bay detainees, saying, look, this guy signed up for service. He put our uniform on. He was taken in a time of war. We do not leave our soldiers behind. Now, the criticism has come because these are 5 top Taliban guys that they swapped for him. Some say there's no guarantee they won't get back on the battlefield. Some are saying this guy needs to be court-martialed because of what some of his comrades are claiming, that he deserted the squad. Let's sort it out. Brian Bouffard joins us. He's a private attorney who deals with military cases. He was a Navy lieutenant commander and JAG officer. We turn to him in situations like this. Brian, thanks for joining us. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Great.
Brian, is there any first of all, give us the latest on this, on the situation here with Bergdahl. Do we know any more? Is there any more evidence that the guy allegedly deserted his post, and where do we go from there?
We've had a lot of information come out this week, and I still, even as I sit here right now, there's not a whole lot of it that I really credit and feel is all that solid, particularly what we're hearing out of the White House and what we're hearing from certain members of Congress. But I am still more or less convinced by what the people who knew him there on the ground in 2009 are saying. And actually, my opinion about whether he's a slam dunk deserter has actually kind of softened a little bit, because I've read or heard of a report that was done shortly after he left that documented apparently that he had left his post a couple of times before that and come back. As much of a bad idea as that sounds like, that may make it a little bit more difficult for the government to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he had the intent to stay away permanently.
Well, the State Department spokesperson Marie Harf, she had a rough go at it this past week, but she came out and said, we are going to look into any and all allegations. They had 5 years to do this. Why now?
Well, I think the answer to why now is because now is the only time where we have a potential criminal case coming out of it. We didn't know where he was necessarily. We didn't know whether he was coming back. It was more important to investigate maybe the circumstances of the disappearance from an operational perspective rather than a criminal perspective.
Outside of his comrades that served with him, what other evidence do you need to court-martial him on desertion charges?
They can, in my opinion, they can charge him in good faith today. I mean, I think they clearly can prove unauthorized absence. To be able to prove desertion, like I said, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that in 2009, when he left, he intended to stay away permanently. And I've seen some, I don't want to necessarily call it evidence yet, but some reporting from the media that some of the soldiers there who knew him say that he left his weapon, he left his body armor, he just kind of went out there with a compass and a canteen. And it's certainly in a war zone controlled by the enemy, that seems like an incredibly foolish thing to do unless you intend to not come back. So that's, to me, I think they could charge him, and I think even now, based on what we think we know, they could have a pretty decent chance of convicting him.
Conviction. Is there any difference? Is there any important difference between the U.S. Civilian and military criminal justice systems in convicting this guy? Is any of that taken into account?
The offenses themselves obviously are a lot different. We don't have, in the civilian world, we don't have a criminal offense for, not showing up to work, for example. If you don't show up to work, you might get fired, but you're not going to be prosecuted. In the military, obviously, it's very different. And in this case, not only is not showing up to work an offense, but in time of war, under circumstances like these, he could conceivably even get the death penalty.
Wow. 415-808-0810 is the number, 808810. We're speaking with military attorney Brian Bouffard. The website is jagdefender.com. He's a former Navy lieutenant commander and JAG officer, and he's agreed to take calls. So if you want to chime in and ask him a question, you can do so. 415-808-0810 is the number. Brian, outside of your legal opinion, going back to your military experience, why do you think so many of his former comrades have come out and said this guy's a deserter?
Just the sense I get is that they truly believe it. And not only do they seem to truly believe it, but I haven't seen any report from anybody there with him at the time that really says otherwise. They appear to be kind of marching in lockstep that hey, this guy deserted, and he did so under dishonorable circumstances. So the other issues that kind of come out from what they're saying is there are other offenses that I think that he could also conceivably be charged with, both of which would also carry potentially the death penalty. One of them is if you're before the enemy and you throw down your arms, that's an offense. Mm-hmm. If you aid the enemy, that's an offense. In other words, if they were able to get any information out of him at all, and he voluntarily gave that up to them, that's another offense there as well. So I see 3 potential offenses right now that he could potentially be charged with.
We're talking Bowe Bergdahl. Should he be court-martialed for desertion? Our guest is military attorney Brian Bouffard. He specializes in military cases. We're going to take your calls coming out of the break. Brian, if I could get you to hold on out of we have to go to traffic here. It's at 12:45. KGO, the place to turn for traffic on the 5s. Lee Graham standing by at the KGO traffic desk.
Whenever news happens, get it instantly on the air or straight to your phone with KGO News Alerts.
San Francisco area drivers spent 49 hours in traffic.
When big stories happen.
Why anchor bolts on the new eastern span of the Bay Bridge snap?
The federal sequester forcing deep defense budget cuts means that
a popular Santa Cruz beach is off limits at night.
Get it first with KGO Radio and KGO News Alerts. Sign up now at KGORadio.com. On your commute, do less of this and more of this. With traffic every 10 minutes on the 5s on KGO 810.
Our guest is private attorney now, but he specializes in military cases. Brian Bouffard is a former Navy lieutenant commander and JAG officer. The website is jagdefender.com. Should Bowe Bergdahl be court-martialed for desertion? And Brian, you've kindly accepted to take some calls, so we're going to go to the phone lines now, if that's okay with you.
Great.
All right, Julie in Sacramento. Hi, Julie. What's your take on this?
My take is that I've got a lot of questions.
Okay.
One is, was he suffering from PTSD, and was he on prescribed medications?
I don't know that we know that. The relevant question there would be, was he suffering from it when he left?
Yeah.
That's the question that would affect the analysis of whether he is guilty or not guilty. Certainly, 5 years in captivity with a brutal enemy, I would not be surprised if he has issues now, and I think that would be considered in sentencing if he were convicted.
Yeah. So what is he going to have to go through as far, they say they're going to have to check his health. He's going to have to clear some hurdles before any kind of investigation can take place. What does he have to go through?
Well, undoubtedly, there in Germany now, he's being pretty thoroughly debriefed, even as his medical issues are taken care of. So I think the main thing that everybody's trying to find out from him right now is intelligence on the Taliban that he's able to tell them based on 5 years of being with them.
And what does that entail? I mean, what do you think this guy knows? If he was a captive or a prisoner of war, I mean, how much intelligence could the guy have picked up?
If he were sitting in a cage that whole 5 years, probably not a lot. But some of the reports that we're seeing indicate that he may have been more or less accepted into their community. I've heard reports even that he'd been allowed to carry a gun. And I don't know that I necessarily credit that. That sounds pretty far-fetched, but if true, and he were, more embraced by them as somebody who had sympathies with them, he may very well have learned some things that we would want to know.
How long until we hear from him?
Probably. Well, there's no telling. I'm a little bit surprised that they haven't flown his family out there to see him in Germany yet. I think that's sort of interesting, but I think that they're, like the White House says, I do agree with this. They're probably going to let that just take as long as it needs to take. Yeah.
We have a caller. Is it Gillian on line 2? Gillian, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
Yeah, I'm calling because I'm a veteran and almost 67 now, and I'm disturbed by all of this because this is a guy who was open about the fact that he didn't like us being over there, but he had left before and always came back. Mm-hmm. But everybody has convicted him and strung him up, and we need to hear what he has to say before we do that.
Yeah, I mean, I just asked Brian, how long until we hear from him. He says he's a little surprised that he hasn't flown his family over there, so they're debriefing him.
Well, the family has said that they want him to take as much time as he needs to come around. He's not even speaking English very well.
Yeah, appreciate the call. Brian, what do you make of the emails that he did send to his parents? Would those even come into play in a possible case?
They could. I mean, anytime a criminal defendant has document relating to anything that's important to the case, that's going to come out. And if he's sending emails to his parents indicating dissatisfaction with what's going on, or even going so far as hating America or anything like that, I mean that does go to his mental state, and that does shed light on what might have been his intent. In other words, if he hates what he's doing and hates what we're all about over there, and he left, doesn't that make it more likely that he intended to leave and maybe intended to stay gone permanently? So I do agree with the caller. There's so little that we really know at this point. Most of what we've seen is just speculation, and we have to keep that in mind. He is absolutely innocent until he's proven guilty, and he may never even face any kind of trial at all. That's going to be a political question.
I'm curious, what do you make of the video that the Taliban released of the swap? And what do you make of them releasing it before our government came out and possibly released it? And what's the motive? What's the motive there?
Well, unfortunately, I think from that perspective, the Taliban can kind of look at this as almost a total victory. I mean, they got 5 guys for the one guy that they gave back to us, and appears that they got they got a very good end of this deal. They got 5 not just rank and file PFC equivalents like Sergeant Bergdahl was at that time. They got back 5 of their senior commanders, one of whom at least has been reported as saying, yeah, I'm going to take up arms again. And we would have to know that. It would be ridiculous to assume that a lengthy stint in Guantanamo Bay without a trial is going to make them relax about hating America.
Yeah. It's crazy to me that this thing has become politicized. I mean, and I was talking to a political consultant earlier this week, and I said, why has this thing become politicized? And I use this answer all the time, Brian. Duh, politicians are involved in it. But I mean, really what we're doing here, we really need, I believe, to hear from the guy. I really believe we need to hear from the guy. But I can't discount what his former comrades are saying either. I mean, I can't discount that, and I can't discount the emails. I can't just, the emails that we saw, you can't just glaze past those either, but we do need to hear from him.
I agree, and in any kind of a criminal case, there's a very good likelihood that you will never hear from him directly. For example, if I were his lawyer right now, I would be working on an immunity agreement with him. Yeah. He doesn't give up any information until everybody says, we're not going to prosecute you for anything that you might have done in 2009.
Yeah.
Whether he has even been provided legal counsel, I strongly doubt it, but he may end up making statements that hurt him pretty severely later on.
Have you ever seen a case like this?
I've dealt with a lot of unauthorized absence cases, but I've never personally dealt with a case of a deserter in wartime who's come back to this kind of a political firestorm.
Yeah. Wow. And I mean, they're talking death penalty now.
I don't know that it is actually talking death penalty. I just know that as a legal option, it does exist.
Brian Bouffard's our guest. The website is jagdefender.com. He's a military attorney who specializes in military cases, former Navy lieutenant commander and a JAG officer. Brian, as always, we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Matt. Take care.
You too. 415-808-0810 is the number, 8080-810. You can still chime in on Twitter at Matt Ray Talk. It's sad. It's sad for his family. It's sad for him, regardless of what you think of the guy. It's sad all the way around. I mean, this guy spent 5 years. I don't know if he was a deserter. I don't know if he went to the other side. I don't know that. That's not for me to decide. That's for the government and the courts to decide. But it is sad. No matter family. I mean, you're dealing with a family who has been missing their son for 5 years, and that if you have a kid or if you're a member of a family, that's got to tug on your heartstrings. Michael Finney coming up following the top of the hour news break. Michael, how are you?
Hey, we're doing great. We're going to talk about how do you get telemarketers